We ready to start? Okay. I'm a grateful recovering addict named Jana.
Hi, Jana.
Hi. Would you please help me open this meeting with a moment of silence for the addict who still suffers, followed by the serenity prayer. Thank you. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I've asked an addict to read the 12 steps.
I'm Pam, and I'm an addict.
Hi, Pam.
If you want what we have to offer and are willing to make the effort to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. These are the principles that made our recovery possible. 1. We admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. We humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. We made a list of all people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. We made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. We continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thanks, Pam.
And another addict has volunteered to read the 12 traditions.
Hi, my name is Ray, and I'm an addict.
All right.
We keep what we have with vigilance, and just as freedom for the individual comes from the 12 steps, so freedom for the group springs from our traditions. As long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that would tear us apart, all will be well. 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on NA unity. 2. For our group purpose, there is one ultimate authority, a loving God as He may express Himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop using. 4. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or NA as a whole. 5. Each group has but one primary purpose, to carry the message to addict who still suffers. 6. An NA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the NA name to any related facility or outside enterprises, lest problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7. Every NA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Narcotics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. NA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. Narcotics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the NA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thanks, Ray.
The topic of this workshop is getting a sponsor. So therefore, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who happens to be my sponsor. I'll give you Deb.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Deb, and I'm an addict.
Hi, Deb.
And they just told me just a couple hours ago that I was going to share on this topic, so I'll share my experience, strength, and hope with you. Personally, I've had the same sponsor for 7 years, and I love her. And, when I first came into this program, I had some major trust issues. I didn't like women. And so therefore, it was really difficult to learn how to trust people that you don't like, And, they were always my competitor, and they always wanted my man. And, things are not like that today. But when I asked my first sponsor to be my sponsor, she had some significant clean time, and that was really impressive for me, because anybody that could stay clean for, 5, 6, 8 years, was just mind-boggling for me, because, that was not within my perceptions of what was possible. And, she didn't give me any rules. She never said, you need to work this step. She never called me. And she wasn't my sponsor for very long. Because, even though, I was impressed by her amount of clean time, I wasn't impressed with how she lived her life. And I asked another lady to be my sponsor because she seemed to have some of the qualities that I would like to attain in recovery. But she was a very busy person. And so I would call her on a regular basis, and she didn't seem to ever return my phone calls. So I live in a little community. It's maybe 25,000 people, maybe 30,000 people. And we don't have a whole lot of meetings in my town. So I go to meetings in Columbus, Indiana. And had been going to meetings there for a couple of years. And several women got together and they decided to go to a women's workshop in Ohio. So there were 8 of us that went to this workshop in Dayton, Ohio. And at that workshop, I met a lady from Columbus, Indiana. I'd never met before. And, she was a very together person. She carried herself physically very, self-assured and self-confident, And she didn't, dress real fancy, but, she was a pretty simple, pretty simply dressed, but sensible, And she was very peaceful and serene. And those were the qualities that I wanted to attain in recovery. Because I was always this crazy person, I wore like 5 necklaces and 5 bracelets on each arm, and handful of rings, and, I had to wear all this gaudy stuff so people would pay attention to me so that, I could be the center of the universe, And this lady, I asked her at this workshop to be my sponsor. And she said, sure. And, she called me and she said, well, how are you doing on step 1 this week? And I'd say, well, I'm working on it. And she'd say, well, I'm a busy person. And she's, I'm a busy person too. And if I can take time out of my life to make sure you're doing what you need to be doing. You can take time out of your busy life to be doing what you need to do for yourself, you know. And, you know, when I did my, you know, my first, second, and third step, I got to my fourth step, and man, I was really overwhelmed. And, you know, for me, you know, I had to keep trying to get a sponsor that, you know, had what I wanted to be in recovery to get to where I am today. Because if I pick a sponsor who still lives in all that chaos that I had when I was using, then my life is going to remain chaotic. Because my sponsor is my mentor or my role model for my life today. So if I pick somebody that lives in the problem instead of the solution, then I'm never going to have anybody that's going to help me, you know, with the solutions for my life instead of, you know, constantly living in the problem. I got to my fourth step and I told my sponsor, I said, you know, I can't do this. And she said, we've all been there. You know, we've all felt, keyword being felt, the same way you do. And, you know, we got together and we shared about those feelings. You know, because when I first got into recovery, I didn't know what feelings were. I knew how to be really rageful, and I knew how to be really telling you about it. You know, but that was the only real emotion that I ever felt. You know, when somebody died, I knew I was supposed to cry, but I never really knew how to grieve, you know. And, you know, part of getting the sponsor that I have today was having a little bit of faith that my higher power would send me somebody who would actually help me in my life. You know, when I got here, I didn't know what faith was. And, you know, for a long time, I still didn't have trust in my fellow human beings. But as long as I continue to have faith in my higher power, if the people in the rooms or my sponsor in some way invalidated my trust, I had faith that my higher power would help me get through any situation that came up in my life. And, you know, the important thing for me in having the sponsor that I have is that she feels. So therefore, she helps me when I'm in, you know, when I'm in denial. She'll let me stay there for a little while because denial is still a God-given feeling. We're there for a reason because we need time to process, you know. And when it's time for me to be thinking about moving on from that denial, she'll start, you know, well, now I see this situation and this is what I see, you know. And, you know, I've been through times in my recovery where I've said to myself, I don't want to call my sponsor. She's very busy. I don't want to burden her. I don't want to, you know, take up her time because she's busy and you know, all those excuses that we all use not to call our sponsor. Because we do that, you know. We feel like we're not worthy of taking up their time because they're such busy people. But, you know, today I'm a sponsor myself, and I have a realization that, you know, when I pick up the phone and call my sponsor, it's a blessing. My sponsor is a blessing in my life today. You know, if you ask somebody to be your sponsor and it doesn't work out for you, one of the things that you all taught me in this program was that if I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of anything else in my life. So if a sponsor's not working out for me, I need to say, look, I love you, but I need to move on. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you. Sometimes, usually it has to do with me, for what I need in my life. And I can do that. I can do that, and I can say, you know, I need to change directions here, and I need to get somebody else that'll help me move in the direction I need to go. And you know, I had to go through a couple of sponsors before I got the one that's worked for me today. And I have a wonderful support system with the women in my area. That if, you know, just for today, my sponsor's not available, I have a dozen women that I can call at any given time. Because part of getting a sponsor is also getting a support system. And I have that today, and that's a real blessing in my life. I'm truly grateful to be at this convention, and I was not expecting to share, but I've shared from the heart, and I hope somebody heard something that they needed to hear. God bless you all. Thanks.
Yeah.
And now I'll give you Dave H.
Hi everybody, I'm Dave. I'm an addict.
Hi, Dave.
This is overwhelming. I was just asked also a little while ago to do this workshop, so perhaps we can kind of do it together. You know, we'll open up the floor here in a little bit and be a little bit interactive. But you know, still, it doesn't hurt us to go over the basic information. We always return to the basics. We're supposed to. When a person first comes into NA, there's certain suggestions, basic suggestions that they receive right off the bat. They talk about get a home room, do 90 meetings in 90 days, stay out of a relationship, and get a sponsor. And a sponsor's main purpose is to guide a newcomer through the steps. They do this by sharing their strength, hope, and experience. Deb mentioned going through a couple different sponsors. I want to play the devil's advocate and say first of all that a sponsor is not meant to be put on a pedestal. A lot of times a person will tend to put all their eggs in one basket, so to speak, to lean on a sponsor and not develop that support system surrounding him or herself. Personally, I've outlasted 2 sponsors. They both went out. I had a third sponsor that was a friend of mine, and it turned out he collected sponsors to feel important. But that doesn't mean that I don't love and trust the sponsor that I have now. If I could do this myself, I wouldn't need to be here. I wouldn't be here. My sponsor, besides sharing his strength, hope, and experience, has gotten to know me well enough that he knows my patterns. He can say, hey, Dave, when I'm going through something, he can say, hey, isn't this something like you went through last summer? And isn't this what you did about it? And can put me back on the path. I like that. I never had, in my life, a best friend that I could tell everything to, or a relative, or anybody else that I could just tell everything to. I was pretty much a loner. And a sponsor, Deb also mentioned trust. That was a big issue for me, and sharing with a sponsor was my first experience in trust. And that came a little bit at a time, believe me. It took me a long time to even, work my way up to my sponsor. I got to know him a little bit at a time. One of the things that my sponsor told me to do was get some phone numbers and call them. And I just, for some reason, really have a hard time doing that. I did, at least. It was virtually impossible. And he got to where he would actually write the name and tell me who to call and when to call. That's how I had to get started calling people. And he made sure that I had, this is my first sponsor, he made sure that I had a support system. I still owe him a debt, a real debt of gratitude. Just like my sponsor today, if he went out tomorrow, that doesn't negate all the good that he has done me so far. So anyway, I started calling these numbers and sharing with people and finding out what we had in common, and little by little I began to open up. And I don't open up. I wouldn't open up at a meeting the same way that I would open up with my sponsor. But I'm doing better at both. I was absolutely an isolationist and not a very happy person. As a matter of fact, I was really a downer. I must have been really bad to be around, because I could tell you all that was wrong with the world and all that was wrong with my life, and I thought I was clever because I could figure this out and pointed out why things were so bad, like I was the only one who noticed that things were bad. And as I opened up to other people, it was the first time I ever actually learned how to relate to people, and this is all through the sponsor. I'm not sure. I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm trying to make a point. I have worn a mask all my life. I never actually learned how to relate. I would deal with you as a dealer or as a buyer, as a subordinate or as a supervisor, whatever my position would be. I'd know what to say because I was in that position. But as far as just saying, hey, what's up, and relating to a person, I didn't know how. I was diagnosed one time in the net house with borderline personality. And I thought that meant that I was on the edge of having a personality. But actually that means you don't know who you are. And I didn't. And when I got to NA, after the hug, I felt close to the people, and I wanted to be with them, but again, I didn't know how. When everybody else was, after the group hug, everybody kind of shoots the shit, and gets in little cliques or stands around and whatever. And I always stood around alone. I didn't leave. I wanted to be there, but I was standing in the corner alone, just trying to catch snatches of other people's conversation. And it was through my sponsor that I learned to relate at all. I was amazed to learn that he was actually interested in what I had to say, that it mattered to him. My God, what I have to say actually matters to somebody. He actually cared, and that emboldened me to spread that out again to some of the other people that I called and associated with, and little by little I found out who I am, and actually I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy now. But My sponsor is pretty easygoing, but he has very clear boundaries. He has a very clear belief system, very defined belief system, and this is right and this is wrong and what have you. And he keeps it pretty simple for me, and I'm kind of glad for that. We don't always agree, don't get me wrong, but I'm glad for that because I like to analyze things. I like to tear things apart until they're so complicated they can never be put back together again. So he said, no, Dave. Just go back to the first step, read the first step. That's all the time. Go back to the first 3 steps, Dave. Go back to the first 3 steps. And I find that helps. But as far as getting a sponsor, I don't know, is there anybody here that doesn't have a sponsor? Well, that's an issue in itself. Who to get for a sponsor? You just heard me talk about what I went through with sponsors. I was a little luckier than Deb because I got some good out of the ones I had before they went out. But she told you some of her experience. It's good to get somebody you're comfortable with. It doesn't necessarily have to be your best friend, though. It probably is better if it's not. Somebody who you want what they have and are willing to teach it. Personally, I have 4 sponsees, and that's all I'll take, because I take sponsorship very seriously, and when I get a call in the middle of the night, I don't get 10 million calls in the middle of the night, put it that way. When I get one, I know it's important, and I will answer the phone. And I don't just call these people once in a while. I meet with them regularly for lunch or whatever to go over their step work. And we get very close because I believe strongly in besides getting through the steps, that part I mentioned about getting to know the person really well, so you know their patterns, and you know their habits, and by the time you get through the 4th or 5th step, you know a person pretty well. And getting that close and being that close with another person, whether you're the sponsor or the sponsee, is a really spiritual experience. And it should be done with somebody that you feel is trustworthy, so you have the confidence to get that deep. Because if you don't get that deep, especially by the time you get to the 4th and 5th step, it's pretty much hasn't helped a hell of a lot. But I would definitely suggest getting one. I know a lot of people who have bought that 12-step guide book and started getting a pencil and just started answering it on their own. I know other people newcomers who have tried to sponsor each other, answering questions. They answer questions of each other, from the book. And that is worse than the blind leading the blind. That is one downfall leading another downfall. That sponsor is very important, and I'd like to. Apparently I'm not focusing that well right now, but I wish I could list the reasons that a sponsor is so important. Again, the basic or the primary purpose of a sponsor is to lead one through the steps. And that is, of course, that is the program. That is the program. And the steps are a lot more involved than they seem when you read them. When I got into treatment, I did not know, I couldn't imagine what they meant by working the steps. What do you mean, work them? It took me about 20 minutes to read the steps. I made you want to turn your will and your life over? I said, yeah, at this point I'll turn it over to the cleaning lady. That didn't take a lot of work. And I finished the steps in about 20, 25 minutes, and I was done. So I didn't understand very well. I just, you can take my word for that. And it took me a while after I started coming around to understand what I meant by working the steps. And I never did find out until I got a sponsor. And then I really found out, here, work this. But it is all important. If you're having trouble finding one, I know you're from Fort Wayne, and it is a problem around here. Not enough qualified women sponsors to go around, it seems. But I would work on it. I would work on it. It's hard to get anywhere in this program without somebody spearheading the way for you, and that is the sponsor, the guiding light, so to speak. And I'll quit with that.
Thank you, Deb and Dave. At this time, I will open the mic for other people in the room who might like to share. I'm a grateful recovering addict named Jana.
Jana?
When I first walked in these rooms and they said something about getting a sponsor, I was like, oh, what's that? And they told me it was somebody that would help me work through the steps. And when I read those steps, I thought I could do those by myself. I didn't need any help, and I'd have them done in a week. I didn't do it in a matter of minutes, but I'd have them done in a week, no problem. And I, too, had trouble with the concept of working them. I didn't really know what that meant. And then I'd hear the old-timers sitting in the room talking about actually applying them to your life. And that was a totally new concept for me as well. For the first, I don't know how long, I did the 3-step waltz. And I went 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oop, I'm scared of 4. 1, 2, 3. And that didn't work real well. But part of that was I didn't have that closeness with my sponsor that I needed to be able to trust her with the 4th step. I have to give her lots of credit, though. She gave me a wonderful foundation on those first 3 steps. I then got someone that I did really admire her program and continued on through the steps. You know, a sponsor is, for me, is kind of like my best friend in high school. It's somebody I have no problem calling out and saying, I'm so upset about this, or I'm so mad about that, or I'm feeling so good about this. And you know, my sponsor used to say that she got lots more out of sponsoring me than she got lots more from me than she felt she gave to me. And I never understood that till I started sponsoring somebody. And today I understand that. And what I've learned is, you know, I can't do this alone. I couldn't do this alone. That's why I had to walk in these rooms in the first place. I tried to do it and it didn't work. For me, the sponsor is my personal guide and the fellowship is my support system. But I have to have that personal guide to walk through my life with me today. I'm at the point today, I will say this, I'm at the point today that my sponsor and I do spend lots of time together. I don't call her as often as I should, but there are many, many times that we finish each other's thoughts, and that's really scary. But that tells me how well I let her get to know me, and that's what's the most important for me. It's one thing to say I have a sponsor, it's another to use it. I have to use my sponsor, I have to call her when something's going on. And I really thought for probably the first month that I was in this program that I could do this without one. And that didn't work well at all. So I think that probably, and that was the first piece of advice I got when I walked in the rooms, was get a sponsor. And I had no clue what they were talking about. So, however, it happens to have been probably the most important thing I could have done to save my life and to stay clean. Getting a sponsor is very, very important. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Huh?
Do we just sit here and let the tape run?
I am. As long as we have the time. I'm still David. I'm an addict.
Hi, David.
I wanted to mention something, and I'm sorry the girl laughed. This is my second time around in Narcotics Anonymous. I've got about 7 years now. At my first time, I had about 5 years in, and that was the first time that I outlasted a sponsor. He went out, and by that time I was heavily involved in service. I was the area PI chair and the regional PI chair, and I was traveling around speaking, and I knew everybody. I called everybody, again, for business. I had something to say. I had to have something to say in order to call. So I knew everybody, but eventually it turned out that I was walking around with a progressive debilitating problem. I had 3 crushed vertebrae and 8 discs shot. And I had a lot of pain from that and lack of sleep. And the combination was quite literally driving me insane. And although I knew everybody in the fellowship and I was friendly with everybody, I didn't know anybody well enough to call and say, I'm going crazy, I need help. And here I'm speaking all the time. I'm asked to speak, and I'm great at telling other people how to do it. You know what I mean? And at the same time I was suffering, I was still trying to carry on the business, the business of NA. And I got to the point where the degradation of using actually looked better than the situation I was in. And I made that choice to go for it. Like I said, I think I know for a fact by that time I was clinically insane. But it never had to come to that point. I could have, a lot of things I could have done, very simple feedback from certain people, like get to a doctor, things like that would have helped. I could have hung in there with some support, and I wish to God I had. And now I still, I'm not thrilled to death about calling people and just going, what's up? But I do it, and I make a point of doing it. I make a point of calling my sponsor regularly, and I make sure that I'm close to my sponsor. As I said, I have a trust problem, and I have a problem getting close to people. But I also make sure I maintain that phone list for my support group, because when a crisis comes, I have found that it's too late to get in the habit then of making those calls or talking on a deeper level with your sponsor. Like I said, it took me a while to know my sponsor, and for a long time it was very superficial until I got to know and trust him. But I made sure that I did do that. Like I say, when the crisis comes, I'm already in the habit of sharing, rather on a deep level with him. And I don't know if that story helps anybody else, but I was out for a couple years, and well, I tell you what, I had learned so much, and I had got so much spirituality. I thought I'd never use again. I thought it was impossible to ever be that stupid again. How can you unlearn what you learned? And I found out, you can be that stupid again, and even worse. And it didn't take very long. And I had a much more serious attitude when I slunk back into Narcotics Anonymous and sat at the back of the room for a long time, and chose my sponsor carefully, and started over for real, for serious, on a much deeper level. So I don't know, keep that in mind. It is possible to go back there. I have just today. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.